Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another instalment of ASA TV. This afternoon we're joined by Danielle Buckley. Danielle's a renowned psychologist that works in helping ASA over a number of years in the apprenticeship and traineeship space. Danielle spent the last week travelling around the countryside, meeting with employers, running seminars, speaking about working with apprenticeships and traineeships and apprentices and trainees, and the fact that most of them these days are millennials. And so she's got some wisdom to share with us this afternoon. We've got a range of questions to ask Danielle. As you engage with the session this afternoon, if you do have questions that you'd like to send through, please list them in the comments section, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can throughout the afternoon. So Danielle, welcome, and it's really nice to have you here.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to really unlocking the millennial code is what we're calling the seminar. So so tell us, what are some of the challenges facing school leavers as they transition to the workforce? Because I've got to remember that these are all people who are transitioning out of a safe world at school into the workforce. So what are some of the challenges facing younger people these days?
Yeah, well, I think one of the main challenges is that young people have so much choice today, so they don't know what to do when it comes to leaving school. We also know from the research that most people turn to their parents as opposed to career advisors or teachers. So there's a real piece in upskilling parents to help parents understand what's available for kids. But equally, particularly with our millennial population, we have a really optimistic group of people. So people who expect that they're going to be high performers straight away, people who are looking for really quick ways to progress, and a really high level of self-belief. So when particularly our millennials move from the school setting where it's comfortable, they're looked after, they're nurtured, and then they transition into the workforce, when things become tough, we're seeing a lot of millennials not have the mental toughness, the resilience and the grit, and as a result they're leaving. So we know our completion rate is really low for apprentices at the moment. Equally, the university dropout rate is really high. So there's a real piece around school leavers not quite being able to handle what the workforce throws at them.
Interesting. And one of the things you touched on there is the parental influence, and as much as most of our people engaging this afternoon will be our employers, I guess a lot of them will be mums and dads too, with kids who are approaching the age where they might want to start to work and might be struggling to get them motivated to engage in the workplace. And so what are your tips for the parents in that space then as well?
Yeah, I think parents have raised some really great values in young people today. So they've certainly raised values around making sure you find a career that you're passionate about, that you're motivated by. But what's happening is when people enter the workforce, and we know that only 30% of the workforce is actually engaged, so that means the people that turn up to work are sort of committed and connected to the job. So if we've got young people who want to follow their dreams and have these great inspiring workplaces, when they actually start work, if their managers and supervisors are not engaged, committed and connected, the young person doesn't feel valued and they can leave. And we're seeing that that is exactly what's happening. Some of the tools, though, that we've provided parents and we've provided young people with on the SkillsGrow website, and we've got the link to this in our comments section, is people can get on and do a career quiz. So job seekers, students, start to understand a little bit about what's their motivational style and perhaps what roles might actually suit them when it comes to transitioning into the workforce. We've also got our job fit test on there. So once young kids get a bit of an understanding of what careers might suit them, they can then go and assess their suitability. So thinking about a specific role, then they can answer questions around their strengths, their motivations, their subject selection, and find out how suitable they are. So for example, somebody might want to become a plumber and realise that maybe they're only 20% suited to that role. But what the diagnostic then does is provide a whole series of development points. So kids can go away and improve their suitability for that career path, whether that be through subject selection, work experience, or building some kind of soft skills.
So that recruitment piece is pretty important, really, isn't it? And making sure that we do the best we can to choose the best people who are going to be suited to those roles. And the mention you made of the SkillsGrow website and the testing that employers can use free of charge to actually start to get a little bit more scientific about the recruitment process and a bit more testing around the candidates that are coming on board. And as we mentioned, employers can engage with that for free. So please, if you're not using it, have a look at those tests and see whether you might be able to sharpen up your own recruitment process. Let's dig a little deeper now and tell us a bit about millennials. What are the sort of character traits, the stereotypical traits that we see in this generation?
Yeah, well, when we look at millennials, roughly they're born between the mid-80s up until 2000. And we see a really optimistic group of people. We also see a really narcissistic group of people. And I want to use these stereotypical traits quite loosely because not all our millennials have these traits. But this has very much been a product of the way that they've been raised. So millennials have grown up with technology, which means that they've grown up expecting things to happen quickly. And the high narcissism piece, that high level of self-belief, has also led to a high level of mental health issues, particularly once kids transition from school and into the workplace. And this is causing huge problems for employers because particularly when a lot of Gen Xers and baby boomers started their place of work and they were very reserved in the conversations that they would have. They're much more sceptical, so they expected things to take time, and they had a higher level of patience than perhaps our millennials. So this is causing huge challenges for employers, and it's really putting a call to action for employers to start thinking about what's your workplace like and what do you like to work for.
So there's definitely going to be some challenges there for our employers to have a bit of a look at their own workplace and how well they're suited to be able to bring on these younger people in that space.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when we look at the research as to why apprentices don't complete or they quit their role with an employer, some of the top reasons are interpersonal difficulties at work. So just an inability to build relationships and not get along with their boss, their supervisor or their co-workers. Another key reason is a mismatch in expectations. So we're seeing a lot of kids starting work in an apprenticeship or a traineeship often because mum and dad said they have to, as opposed to them actually wanting to do that kind of work. And as a result of that, we're not getting the right people in the role. So one of the tools that we've created for employers that's been really successful is a really simple document called our Ways of Working Agreement. And again, you can access this through SkillsGrow. But it's a one-page document that the employer and apprentice can discuss on day one. And from an employer's perspective, it discusses a whole lot of hygiene factors. And I always say to employers that when you're hiring an apprentice or trainee, you need to make the implicit explicit. So if you have specific rules about when somebody can't come to work and they have to call in sick, is a text message okay, or do you need them to pick up the phone and call? What dress code do you expect? What's the process on manners? What time do people need to start work and finish work? For a lot of our millennials and apprentices and trainees who are beginning work, they're coming from zero work experience. So what we saw with a lot of our Gen Xers is when they started an apprenticeship or a traineeship, they'd quite often had part-time work before. So employers today are not only teaching the skills required in an apprenticeship or a traineeship, but they're also teaching young kids how to work. And that's a real challenge for employers because what they're expecting is often different to what they're getting. So the Ways of Working Agreement enables employers to have this basic conversation on day one, but it also gives the apprentice an opportunity to say what they expect of the employer. And that's been really insightful for a lot of employees because that's often not a conversation that's been two-way.
Interesting. So you're really suggesting that communication needs to be heightened in that very early phase to be clearly communicating what you're expecting from your apprentices and your trainees as you bring them on board, and that'll help reduce some of the problems. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So investing in building in relationships is key if we want our apprentices to improve their completion rate. But we also know when people have good quality relationships at work, they're more engaged. So whether they're an apprentice, a tradesperson or a business owner, if we can use strategies and evidence-based strategies to improve engagement, businesses will be more profitable, they'll be more productive, and better places to be. So starting to get employers to think differently about building relationships is really important. We've had a lot of great stories from employers just doing things like having coffee mornings, barbecues where they invite the apprentice or trainee's parents or support people along, being able to show them the workplace And getting that sense of inclusion early on has created huge amounts of value, and we're really starting to see great wins when business owners think differently about those sort of engagement strategies when it comes to building relationships.
So often some of our employers, I mean, they're going to be experts at fixing a dripping tap or building a house or whatever it might be, but they might not be experts in this communication phase. So I think it's important to mention the mentoring capability that comes with working with ASA and the work you've done in building that team across the country with ASA and how those mentors can kick in and help too, Danielle. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how that might be there as a resource, because it's there to be used. It
is there to be used, and we did some research with our ASA mentors where we got our mentors to go out and mentor a group of 1,000 kids who had started an apprenticeship. And while we know the national average is hovering around that 50% completion rate, our mentors got that up to 90%. And there's a lot of research now that shows the benefits and the importance of coaching and mentoring in the workplace, particularly with this group of kids. So yes, as you said, there's real pressure on employers, because for a lot of employers, they're business owners because they're technically brilliant at what they do. But the ability to coach and mentor is often a skill that's new to them and not one that's been developed over time. So as a result, we've got this capability. We've got our mentors who are trained, who are excellent, have great track record, and can come in and support your businesses and can support your apprentice. So if you are finding the people management side of it hard, we can help with that. And I think it's really important that businesses be open to having that level of support, because as I said, we're seeing huge benefits in using that as a resource.
And often, as we said, it's not an easy thing to do. So if you wanted a third party to broker that conversation with the trainee and apprentice, it could be just a simple fix once a conversation is initiated and the change is happening. So,
And again, we have to also be mindful that with our apprentices and trainees, many of them are still kids. So a lot of employers have quite high expectations that they're not going to make mistakes. And when they do make mistakes, that's a really bad thing. But we don't evolve and we don't innovate unless we fail. So, really starting to tap into when something goes wrong, how can we improve this process moving forward is an important development conversation, an important performance conversation. So so if business owners are finding it difficult to make time for that, we can use our mentors. Although we also know that when a business owner, or a manager or a supervisor of an apprentice engages in weekly, regular performance conversations, so even just half an hour sitting down, having a coffee and talking about how that person's going, it doubles their engagement rate. So yes, back to the communication and relationship point, from an employer's perspective, investing in our young people is really, really important. But as well as that immediate investment, we've also got our mentors to help with that support.
So you're suggesting putting the time in advance is really going to save time and a bit of anguish later on if we can get that communication process happening sooner and more often if you're talking about weekly in that instance. So. Absolutely.
We really want to encourage business owners, managers and supervisors to start thinking differently about the way that they're working. The workplace is really changing. We're seeing huge amounts of innovation, and change is happening faster than it's ever happened before. So, I think for employers watching today and who will watch this, just start thinking about what's going well in their business now, but what could they do even better? What's one thing that they could do to really develop relationships, help people feel valued, and get to know your apprentice and trainee? What do they want out of work? What are they struggling with? Because again, we're hearing that a lot of apprentices and trainees are actually really scared to communicate exactly what's going on for them to their bosses and supervisors, which again is why having the external mentor come in and run some sessions has been really valuable.
And we can't walk away from the fact that our employers who are successful, who are growing their businesses, are going to be wanting to rely on trainees and apprentices as their workforce of the future. So some of these skills that can be developed now will be very useful for them going forward in building a strong business. And ASA, they're supporting you in the background with our tools that you've mentioned, and also our mentoring team. If anyone is watching today and would like to engage a mentor, then please send through a message in the comments section, because we're happy to get our mentoring team in touch. also an industry consultant. If you were looking at more questions about apprenticeships and traineeships, please just note that down in the comment section for us to follow up on after.
Yeah. And if you are thinking about recruiting an apprentice or trainee, head over to the SkillsGrow website because you can use that job fit test as part of a recruitment practice. So, you know, a lot of employees are saying to us, we want to get someone, but we don't know how to find someone or how to find the right person. So you can advertise on our jobs board, which really we have a traffic of about 112,000 members on SkillsGrow, and most of those members are job seekers looking for apprenticeships and traineeships. So it's a great opportunity for businesses to hit their target market when it comes to recruitment. But then once you get candidates through the door, use our tools on there to screen them and assess their suitability, and use that intel for whether or not that person's a right fit for your business. So yeah, recruitment practices I think have become really, really important and something for employers to think differently about.
And we focused a fair bit on the challenges of working with millennials so far, but there's also a lot of opportunities in bringing fresh ideas, new thoughts, innovation. Do you want to spend a bit of time thinking about that and what you know, millennials could be adding to our businesses as we grow?
Yeah, and I think the innovation piece is key, and we know that businesses in Australia need to innovate if they're to survive and to last. And a real strength that millennials bring to businesses is, while they've grown up with technology, usually that's also something that's a real strength for them. So getting businesses to start to think differently about how can they use technology, do they have a social media presence, and how can their millennials or their apprentices and trainees own that? So we know people are at their best when they have a high level of confidence, a high level of autonomy, so they're feeling in control of their life, but also a really positive level of relatedness, so good relationships. And I think what a lot of business owners default to is when apprentices and trainees start, by default they get the menial jobs.
Right.
But we want to encourage business owners and employees to think differently about that and say, well, yes, they have to do all of these things, but how can you use the strengths of our young person to innovate? And using technology is a great way to do that. And we've had so many success stories. One springs to mind. We had an electrical company share with us that one of their apprentices created an app for quoting jobs. And it's then improved the productivity in terms of how quickly they can quote a job. So that's a huge opportunity for businesses. Other opportunities involve around coaching and mentoring. So obviously you've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom if you've been doing something for 20 or 30 years. But when you start asking about how you can do something differently, and we've seen situations where business owners have had their apprentice or trainee mentor up as well as mentor down to share some of that knowledge but think differently about the way things have done. There's been huge opportunities there. And we know that by 2025 about 75% of our workforce will be millennials. So starting to play and tap into those strengths is really important.
Keeps coming back to recruitment and making sure you put a lot of energy into making the right choices early on, or doing the best you can in that space, but also that sense of communication all the way down the line, making sure people are aware of what it is that you're expecting as an employer. If you were after some more information, don't lose sight of the fact that there'll be a workbook, that Cracking the Millennial Code, that you can download after today. So you'll see that on the Facebook page as well, the ability to download that document. We might just check in to see if there's any questions that are coming in from the audience. Is there anything there that, while we're just waiting on the, oh, here we go.
Okay. So what are some tips for motivating young people? That's a really great question. And we have that come up at almost all of the events. I think one of the most important things when it comes to motivating young people is find what they're interested in or what they're passionate about. And a lot of people will say, well, they say nothing. But again, coming back to the relationship and communication piece, there's always something. And we had a situation with a young guy that we were doing some coaching and mentoring work with, who was in a plumbing apprenticeship. And when we asked him what motivated him about the job, he said absolutely nothing. But snowboarding motivated him. So work then became a means to an end of facilitating and saving up money to do the other things he was passionate about. So when it comes to motivating individuals, it's about getting to know who they are, and what are their hopes and dreams? You know, what matters to them? Is it about saving? Is it about having a nice car, having a house, owning your own business one day? But you have to have lots of conversations to get to the bottom of that early on.
Mm-hmm. So my business is my livelihood.
And they only care about Facebook.
Sorry, that was
we have a lot of questions in our presentations about this, and again I'll come back to the ways of working agreement. Yes, so technology can be a huge opportunity for businesses when it comes to apprentices and trainees, but identifying the rules and the guidelines around technology on day one is integral in terms of success. So sitting down and having that conversation early on, and then revisiting that document to say, hey, you agreed to this, and now you're not holding up your end of the bargain. Again, has been really successful.
A couple of questions there about our mentors. Are they industry specific?
Our mentors are based all over New South Wales. We've got mentors in Queensland and the ACT. Also
in the other states as well, WA, SA, Victoria. So yeah, right around the country.
And our mentors are really skilled in lots of different industries. However, if there is somebody that has a specific need, we do have some specialists. So there's ways that we can access those services, absolutely. And are there fees involved with the mentors?
No, our mentoring program is free of charge. It's part of what we offer in supporting employers to engage apprentices and trainees and to look after them throughout the process. Because I guess we're with you every step of the way as well in helping make sure that they complete and they end up going on to great careers as part of starting as an apprentice or a trainee.
Yeah, and we recognise that there's going to be issues for the apprentice and trainee when they start. And, you know, it's unusual for a business not to have any issues when they're hiring a new person. So our mentors really can add so much value to businesses and help with that retention. And even if there's just an issue that crops up with a young person and you're not sure what to do with it, get a mentor involved and they can come and help.
Conscious of time, you got some final tips for employers who are sitting out there, maybe with a team of millennials that they're managing at the moment or about to embark on recruiting some new apprentices and trainees?
Yeah, I think my top 3 tips would be, first of all, when you are going to recruit someone, think about who you want. Rather than just saying, I want an apprentice for my business, what strengths are important? Do you need someone who's got a high level of teamwork? Do you need someone who's creative? What strengths are important? And getting employees to think differently about who they're looking for, not just filling a role matters.
Okay. Yeah.
The second thing is use our tools on the website. So we've created a whole series of tools to make employees' lives easier and attract the right candidates for business. So use those. And then the third tip would be, once they're in the job, get to know your apprentice and trainee. Invest in understanding who they are, creating goals, inspiring them, motivating them, and just those regular conversations and building those relationships, I can really guarantee will lead to a more engaged workforce and pay dividends to your business, because we all want employees who are productive and profitable, and sometimes just by building a relationship and creating a place of value will give you those results.
It does seem to me to be, your suggestions are about investing really. It's about putting time in up front in the communication space and in the recruitment space, and then that will pay dividends in getting having a happier workforce and building your workforce of the future. So, yeah. Now I should just point out that if you are interested, today sparked an interest, you should definitely download the Cracking the Millennial Code booklet that's available on the Facebook page. If you are interested in engaging with some of our mentoring team across the country, you should make a comment there on the Facebook page about getting involved with our mentors, or alternatively, if you're thinking about bringing on apprentices or trainees and it might be the first time you've done it, then please know you've got a very experienced team in the background across the country that can support you in this space to build the number of apprentices and trainees. Daniel, any closing comments from you in terms of, I think we've covered a lot. Yeah, definitely it's going to come down to recruitment and making sure that we are putting the time in from that perspective, and using those quizzes. Employers who haven't used them before, I would encourage you to get onto SkillsGrow and actually have a look at the career quiz and the job fit tests, and to see what the outcomes will be, because being forearmed when you go into interviews, you could actually have a lot more information at your fingertips that could prompt a lot of the questions, Danielle, right, in terms of that might come up in an interview. So,
Absolutely.
And being a bit more structured about those interviews.
Yes.
And
we've also got on the website interview questions, tips around coaching and mentoring. There's so much support for employees, and I think one of the key takeaways in my final comment will be that if you are stuck, get in touch, because we're here to help, and we have a whole lot of resources, both online and in person, that can help you in your business when it comes to recruiting and retaining your apprentice or trainee.
I really like what you said about the employers themselves actually really thinking about what it is they want to bring into their workforce, because that's hugely important. What are you trying to add? Are you trying to add some diversity? Have you got a team of followers and you might need someone to show a bit of leadership? Do you need someone to be a bit more creative? And be giving that some thought, and then starting to target who you are going to interview when you are there faced with decisions of choosing between 2 or 3 candidates for a role. Okay, well, we might wrap up at that point, and please remember that you can go on to the Facebook Live page there and download the copy of the booklet, Cracking the Millennial Code. It's there as information, it's free of charge, so please make use of it. As I said before, we've got our mentoring team there to support, and they were very much guided by Danielle throughout the years in coming up with the mentoring support that she's provided to them, that team across the country. So please make use of it, and feel free to reach out to Apprenticeship Support Australia as and when you need in supporting you to look after your apprentices. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, and I look forward to the next instalment. Thank you.